What's going on, family? Long time no see, talk, either way. Just glad that you're here. If you haven't seen my page before, my name is Charlon, and I'm going to be going over something that we all experience in most cases throughout our naval career, especially from the enlisted standpoint, and that is advancement exams. You know, we all go through it, whether you're going from a third up to chief, and then from then on, there's the board review process, and that's perfectly fine. And in this video, I'm going to talk about some of the best tips that I have for you regarding taking the exam. And I threw a little bonus on there too. But if you know this is going to be good, or this is the first time seeing it, go ahead and take a leap of faith, like, share, subscribe, and also check out my ship kit, which is down in the description box below for things that I highly recommend that you have on the ship. But for Navy advancement exams, there are some people that aren't good exam takers, and I don't want to say that's fine, because of course you want your sailors, regardless of whatever branch you're in, you want them to pass. You want them to go to that next level, especially if they're working at that next level. But the only thing holding them back is their exam taking or themselves. And in this, I'm going to go over 10 things that I have, or 11, or 12, either one. It's going to be great. And then I'm going to share some of the things that I've done as well along the way. And I hope that this helps you out, especially if you're taking the chief exam coming up or just any exam in the future, whether it's military or not. So if you're ready, I'm ready. Let's get into it. Number one is, I believe is a huge, big one, is to view your profile sheet, to view your areas of improvement. I have my profile sheet right here. And as you can see, some of the areas that I needed to work on, feel free to pause that. That would be a good area to look at first. If you know you're not good in, let's say, air warfare or navigation, make sure you study a little bit more in those areas. And especially if, based off the platform that you work on, that you're not used to that. With me being an OS, being on a small boy, cruiser DDG, we don't do amphibious operations. So that means I would need to dive into the book and, well, not book, dive into the pubs and read up on amphib. Or if I know a sailor that's good with amphib operations, they can lead that training. And that means that I could soak in that information. Number two, study the material and put it on a piece of paper. From what I've seen for people that take exams, if you ask them a question like, what's 1 + 1? Oh, that's 2, that's easy. But if you put it down on a piece of paper, that's when they might freeze up. So I would say get your reps and sets in and put in those, do a Q&A for yourself on a piece of paper so you're used to looking at that, and time yourself as well, whether it be 2 minutes, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, so you can get yourself into that groove. Because a lot of people know that they have those hours to get it done, but next thing you know is it's not done, time's up. So make sure you get yourself in the groove to knock out those questions that you have. Number three, and this will be more into you actually preparing for it, is just go to bed early and just study a little bit a day prior. Because what I did was, I did study, and I only studied a little bit. I probably looked at maybe 2-3 things, studied for 10 minutes, and that's it. I said, this is me. I'm like, hey, if I don't know by now, then hey, I'm just gonna forget it. But that morning, went, and some of the questions that I did, I knew. So thank you, Jesus, on that. But I say that to say this, don't overstudy your stuff. What I did was, whenever I would study, if I felt like my brain starting to hurt or my head started to tingle, that's when I knew, okay, it's time for me to stop. And that's what I did. And that helped me out a lot. So don't overstudy, don't overwork yourself. Next one. So for the questions, pay attention to the key words that are in there. So if you have to read it over twice, that's perfectly fine. But read over the key words of it. And with that, when you look at every question like that, you'll be able to find the answer much better, much better. Another one is answers the questions that you know and move on to the next question. So what I have here, I have some of my notes here. You probably can't see it. But what I used to do was, whenever I take the exam, let's say questions 1 through 10, I knew 1 through 8. I looked at 9, I'm like, ooh, I don't know that. 10, ooh, I don't know that. On the scratch paper, or you can even do it on your test, what some people have done, you could write it down on there. So you can circle 9, circle 10, or write it down on your scratch paper and go back to it. Because you don't want to put all your energy on that and then your head starts hurting and then it just goes downhill from there. So go back to what you know. And ultimately, which leads on into another thing, is don't second guess yourself, because at the same time, the answer might show up. So if I didn't know question 9 and 10, the answer might show up for that question in question like 53 or 54. And now going back to not second guessing yourself. I mean that in the sense of, if you're confident that it's B, don't listen to that little voice in your head and say, hey, it might be C, it might be D, my boy. I hope I did that right. If not, then sorry. Don't second guess yourself. Don't second guess yourself. If you feel that it's B, stick with B and then go back to it. Next one, if you're unsure, write down a circle the question number or scratch paper in a booklet to get back to it. Already highlighted that. Sometimes the answer will be a further question down the line. I highlighted that. Go back through to check your answers. So once you're done with the test and you go back to the questions that you didn't know before, go back through. I forgot how many hours you have, whether it be 3, 4 hours, wherever it may be. Go back through and double check. First, double check that you circled one and that the Scantron sheet is bubbled in, but make sure you're confident with every one. So since you already circled the answer, you can look at it and be like, yeah, that's it, that's it, that's it, that's it. I didn't feel too comfortable with that one, but I was comfortable with that answer. Do that, please. Because there might be some chances in which you actually have to go back and change it. And that's perfectly fine. No one's gonna stop you, no one's gonna grab your hand and be like, hey, stick with A. And if they did, then they shouldn't have. They shouldn't have. Make sure your exam sheet is completely filled in. And also with that, make sure you police yourself. Make sure everything's bubbled in. Circles are circled, your answers are circled, because the facilitators there, they're gonna check anyway. Also, it doesn't hurt to double check and police yourself. Write down, here's a big thing. Here's a big thing that I did was write down the questions you are unsure about and make a study guide for yourself and sailors. I'm not saying get this same piece of scratch paper and write down what is set, what is dripped, what is this pro word. And then you take the sheet and like, yeah, bye, and then you take off. No, that's not what I mean. What I mean is try to go off of memory, because people do it anyway. You're like, oh, what question was on there? And like, oh man, they asked about BMD, they asked about ASW. Oh, what questions did they ask? So you can write those down, and then boom, you can have a study session with your sailors right there. Because some exams might be leaning more towards certain topics. And lastly, this is the bonus. This might sound weird, but I'm gonna say it anyway. Don't mind the bubbles. What do you mean by that? What I mean by that is that if you have 3 answers that are A and you're confident with that, then stick with that. Don't think just because it's 3 A's in a row, you're like,
oh no, they trying to get me. Nah, it has to be like at least A, B, or C. Well, I got C, C, B, B, A, A.
Maybe the person that wrote the test wants it to be like that. If you know for sure 1 + 1 is 2, 2 + 2 is 4, 3 + 3 is 6, and they all happen to be A, then they're A. There's nothing changed about that. So make sure you're confident in that. And in closing, I hope you enjoyed the tips and advice that I gave. And if there's anything that you felt that I missed, please let me know. I think those were all pretty good, and I feel that it will really help you a lot. And lastly, make sure you have study groups. Make sure you study your bibs. Make sure you quiz yourself and quiz your sailors. There are some people that are just completely super smart and they go in there with all the information that they already know. While people like myself, I gotta study, I gotta take a lot of LOKs, and that's fine. But do what works best for you regards to studying. Do your best with that. But lastly, with that being said, please like, share, subscribe, and just comment down below which study tip did you use the best? Or if there's something that I left out, please let me know. Thank you for your time. Have a great day.